What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 83 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where three best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford
Hello, hello.
and Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Welcome back, boys. We've got a very exciting show on our hands this week because Steve was able to get his hands on Diablo 4's early access beta, and he's got some impressions for us. I largely a casual Diablo fan, but I'm very excited for Diablo 4. Like when we got our first look at it, I was like, this looks like the one for me. So I am very excited to pick your brain about this, Steve. We were messaging a little bit about it over the weekend, and you got me excited. So where are you at with it?
Oh, I'm in love with it. This is absolute phenomenal beta that they put out. Obviously, it's not the full game. There's a bunch of stuff that's been cut off, and then there's like another beta, open beta coming up this weekend for everyone. So if you're at all interested in Diablo, I highly recommend just downloading it on whatever platform, either PlayStation, Xbox, or PC this weekend, and just give it a try. I know you said you're a casual fan, Pete, and I'm curious as well, Max. Have either of you played Diablo games before? Like, what's your history with Diablo? Because I've been playing this game since
You're a
1998. Like,
hardcore.
I'm in love with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're a big Diablo boy. So I have a weird relationship with it because I played a little bit of Diablo 2 when it was already a very old game. I had friends that had grown up playing it and got back into it when we were teenagers, and I rolled a character and played with them for like a weekend, and it was like cool, whatever, right? Diablo 3 comes out. I played that on consoles a good amount with my roommate at the time in college. Like I bought him a copy of it for his birthday or something one year, and we played through the entirety of the main campaign like at least once together. And I think we started another run and never finished it. And I liked it fine, but it very much felt to me like at least at the time, right? I was only playing it because it was an easy game to play with my two roommates and like have a couple drinks and be like, we're all playing a game together, right? And like it's co-op and it's not a fighting game or whatever. And having that kind of like novel couch co-op experience during a generation where there was very few of those. But I didn't love it, like it was very much if I wasn't playing this for the social aspect, I wouldn't have really been too into it because it just felt a little shallow. Like I felt like most of the encounters were a little too easy, and it was like very just kind of like
Yeah, I can understand that.
run,
They
roll.
corrected a lot of that though. Like they added in a bunch of levels. Like I think when I was playing it last, I was on like Torment level 3. Like they just
Okay.
kept making the game more and more difficult as it progressed. Just like, but the difficulty scale is these people are just sponges. They will absorb all of the attacks that you're hitting them with, and it will just take you longer to defeat them essentially if your DPS is too low. That game was, I think, a real departure from the series. It to me is the one that doesn't feel like a Diablo game as much as the others. Even Diablo 4 feels more like a Diablo game. But Max, what about you? Have you ever played Diablo?
Yeah, so I picked up Diablo 3 on launch on PC. Me and a friend sort of went down to the local Blockbuster, and we were able to wrangle our friend who worked there. Wasn't working at the time. We wrangled his discount from someone who worked there. We were like, "Oh yeah, put it on." Yeah, Lewis said to put it on. Yeah, so we got it for like 50% off day one. We walked it home, chucked it on my laptop, and we basically over that opening weekend beat the whole game. Well, we did the final boss, let's say. Then we hit the auction house, sort of the time where sort of to get the new
Oh
gear, you sort
dear.
of needed to interact with the auction house, and we dropped off pretty much immediately after that. Uh,
What a
RIP
then
time
they
the
that
auction
fixed
was.
it.
house. Thank God that got
Yeah,
removed.
yeah. Then they removed all of that stuff, and I kept kind of like, I should go back and play Diablo 3. Never did. Then it came to Nintendo Switch, and I thought I should play Diablo 3. Never went back to it. Lost the access to my Battle.net account that I was using because I had an authenticator on a phone that I no longer have. So yeah, I've not played it since. So I played it the whole game on the launch weekend back it was 2011, whenever it was 2012, and then never touched it again. But I am very interested in Diablo 4.
Okay, so both of you have played mostly Diablo 3 and none of the other ones in the franchise.
Pete said he
Yeah.
played Diablo 2 for a bit, right?
Okay.
Yeah, like I played 2 for a weekend, right? So it's like my relationship to that game is extremely shallow.
Yeah.
Whereas this feels more akin to 2 than it does to 3 based on
Yes, 100%.
visual
Yeah.
style,
Yeah. Well, not
tone.
only visual style, but also gameplay elements. Like you've actually got an inventory and some management that you've got to do. It's not to the extent of Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, where each item takes up multiple blocks and you're kind of rearranging the inventory as you pick stuff up. Each item only takes up one block, but there's a finite amount. While, rather than in Diablo 3, where you can just carry as much shit until it's just like, oh, I'm over encumbered, and then you go back to town and you kind of dump it all. That was very much also focused on like getting your DPS up or like playing as like a tank, and like each of the classes kind of went into different things. And to some extent, Diablo's been about that, but it's never made the numbers kind of front and center like Diablo 3 did. And it's always been really around the items and the lore that come with the items, and the like the rarity of the items that you pick up. That's the whole loop, right? It's I want to go out, I want to attack things, I want to get good loot, I want to keep going and like progress the story, but also pick up really cool shit. And I feel like Diablo 4 really takes it back to that kind of tried and tested playbook. Diablo 3 threw the rule book out of what a Diablo game is, in my opinion, including stuff like the auction house, but they added like rolling, so you can roll with the right stick to quickly get away, and there was no like limit on that. They've replaced that with dashing in Diablo 4. You press the B button and it will allow you to quickly dash away, but you can only do that once until it recharges. So it's like making the game a little bit more difficult. Potions have changed again. From Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, they were the same. You had like potions and you would go and buy potions and you would like store them on a belt, and there'd be different sizes like minor, light, and large potions. Diablo 3 kind of did away with potions entirely, and you had an auto regenerating health and these blood orbs that you picked up when you defeated someone. That's all gone, thank God. In Diablo 4, we're back to a potion-based thing, but you have a set number of potions, and they'll recharge, and you just pick them up as you kind of go out. Um, so you start with 4. I think I've got 5 now. You can pay to upgrade as you reach certain levels to progress from a minor to a light potion, or I think it starts at a tiny potion, and that will allow you to kind of level up the potions. So it's nice to see them bringing back some stuff from old Diablo games, but also kind of still pushing it forward. There was some nice throwbacks to some of the older Diablo games. Um, an old enemy that's an old boss that's been in every Diablo game since Diablo 1. It showed up in Diablo 4, and I was slain by him immediately, and I was really excited about seeing him. And I was also running away, terrified. I was like, no, please leave me alone, because I was way under leveled. I was in a dungeon doing like a totally different quest, and I was looking for something else, and then all of a sudden like I bumped into him, and I was like, holy shit, okay. And like the little boss like icons coming up on the map. But yeah, I'm having an absolute blast with this game at the moment.
I am very pleased by what you're saying there, because a lot of the things that they changed from 3 to 4, like, feel like the stuff that I didn't jive with that much. Like,
Yeah.
the whole, auto heal and what were they called? The blood orbs, like, that was a huge part of, I think, my dissatisfaction with, like, the overall flow of the gameplay, because I never really felt like there was much threat. It felt like so, because even when you died, right, you'd wipe and you'd go back to town, and you could just, like, run back through, like, where you died and just pick right up. It's like,
That's always been the same. In this, it's actually made dying even easier. There are checkpoints that it sets, and you don't lose any of your items. You just lose 10% of the durability on the stuff that you've got in your inventory, and that
okay,
might cost a lot for you to repair or replace. But you don't have to, like in Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, go and pick up your corpse and you start with nothing, which is what you did in Diablo 1 and Diablo 2.
yeah,
You were completely naked again, and you would always keep a spare set in your stash, because you knew if you
sure,
got slain, you'd want to go pick up your shit again,
that makes
because
sense.
you would keep your good stuff on. But it's nice that they've still kept some element of danger there, but it's not to the annoyance that it was in the previous games. And I think there's a good reason for it. This map is massive in comparison to the previous games. It seems to be all one map rather
Okay.
than like you go from Act 1 to Act 2 to Act 3.
Yeah.
You still have those acts, but it's all one map and you can see it all on there. There's ability to unlock mounts, so you can just ride a horse around the place if you want and go from these areas. There are huge towns, and then there are like little mini villages that you can go in that will have different merchants and different like shops. So there might be one that does stuff related to gemstones and like have someone that sells like rare items that are specific to a certain class in one village versus like another village. And some of them have waypoints and some of them don't. And if you use your town portal, it will take you back to the big town, but not to the little town. So I kind of feel like if it took you back to the big town when you died, in the same way they did in other Diablo games, you'd have a hell of a long trip to get back to where you were in the middle of a battle. So I quite like that they've got this checkpoint system that they've put in.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah. I think like my issue with it was just like feeling like there wasn't really stakes and like there being like a financial punishment of like the durability or whatever, like feels pretty significant.
Yeah,
Um,
you used to lose 10% of your gold, I think, but gold kind of becomes less and less relevant as you progress through the game because you
right.
salvage items, you level them up, and you want to make sure that that item you've got that's like a legendary item is the item you're keeping fresh rather than, oh, I need loads of gold to buy new stuff. You're going out and you're finding it, or you're completing quests, or going through
That's
dungeons,
pretty
or
good.
attending events. It feels like they've kind of learned from other games as well that aren't in this genre. Like there are definitely elements of Destiny in here, like just events happening around in the overworld, and you're running around, and there's other people there, and you just happen to join an event with them, and you're all taking
Okay.
down a big boss, and you could be there with your clan, or you could be there with like your friends, or you could just be there with random strangers. I was playing all weekend just with random strangers. It would dump me in an instance, and I would just go about my way.
So let me jump in there because I have some questions about that. About the I guess the overall experience there. So I know that the game has cross play, right? So obviously, like you said, the game is available on PC. It's going to be on PlayStation and Xbox at launch. So yeah, you can get it on whatever your platform of choice is there. What is the situation when it comes to cross play and cross progression? Because my understanding is that there is cross play, right? You can play with anybody on any platform. Can you have cross progression? Can you have that like similar to the situation in Overwatch, where like I have one account, but I have different characters on each platform, or can I have one, continuous character that I play on any platform I want?
So I know for certain that cross play works because it comes up and it will warn you at the bottom that you're playing with people on other platforms, and you can turn that off if you want. As far as I'm aware, I haven't tested it myself, but there is cross progression, and all you need to do is connect your Battle.net account to your Xbox account or your PlayStation account, and then your characters should show up on there. There was cross progression in Diablo 2 Remastered. There wasn't cross play, so you could move your characters around, and I would imagine it's the same system there. So I think you should be good. But I've been playing on PC. I've been playing on Steam Deck entirely all weekend. I had some issues at the beginning, and I'll talk more about that on the Steam Deck podcast this week. There's a couple of things that you're going to want to make sure are changed. Specifically, make sure your UMA frame buffer is set to 4 GB, and I'll talk about that in more detail on the Steam Deck. And there's like a specific version of Wine or Proton that you're going to want to use that's been built just for Diablo 4 beta at the moment.
Is the setup basically like the Overwatch 2 one that we had where you'd have to sort of download Battle.net, install Battle.net, then you'd have to go in and install the game, set Battle.net as your uh uh, as the game in Steam, and then you have to go in and make sure you've got the right Proton thing running for it, or is it a lot easier, or is it even
It's
harder?
exactly that process. So you
All
have
right.
to use the Battle.net launcher, the same as you would with any of the Blizzard games.
Mhm.
So you install the Battle.net launcher, and then you install Diablo through that.
We'll save that for Steam Deck. We'll talk more about that
Sure.
over on that show on Friday. So make sure you go tune in over there if you're interested in playing the game over on Steam Deck, like your boy is, because I definitely want to play it over there.
You think that's where you're going to play it? Because I was going to pick this up on Xbox, and because I was going away this weekend, I went to visit my mum for mother. It was Mother's Day in the UK, and I was away this weekend, so I wanted to take my Steam Deck with me so I could play it and actually be able to talk about it today.
Yeah.
I was gonna play it on Xbox, but I decided not to, and I'm so glad I didn't because I think this game is perfect for a handheld, and I knew that from playing Diablo 3 on Switch. It just really felt at home, and it looks gorgeous regardless. Like, you can play this game at really great settings, really great frame rate, and it just runs perfectly on Steam Deck. It's
Yeah.
so
Brilliant.
good.
I think I'll probably end up picking it up there since it runs so well. That was my big concern. I would like to have it on Xbox as well, but I am not interested in paying for it twice. So I guess we'll see
Yeah,
how that
that'd be
merges.
$140 because this is the first $70 Blizzard game.
We'll see
Wow.
how that acquisition goes, I guess. And if I can play it on Game Pass later on, that's great. But yeah, I think this is a game I feel like I want to have the option to play in handheld mode. So I think I'll probably end up grabbing it on Steam.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably the best place to play it for my money. But I know a lot of people like using keyboard and mouse, and that wasn't really an option on Diablo 2 Remastered. They recommended using a controller. You can use a keyboard and mouse, and it fully supports pointers and keyboard and mouse like you used to with Diablo games, which is great. But I still think it feels best with a controller. But there is a $90 deluxe edition and a $100 ultimate edition,
What's the
and
deal there?
so the
Bits. You get lots
90
of bits.
you get a lot of bits, but one thing you get included in both of them is something I think a lot of people didn't realize that the game had, and myself included, which is a battle pass, which you can buy separately for $10 or £10 for each of the seasons. Now, seasonal content's been
So
something
wait,
that was in Diablo 3.
hold on though. The deluxe edition is $90, but the season pass is $10. What else comes in the deluxe
You get
edition?
like exclusive stuff, exclusive mounts, exclusive
Okay,
aesthetics,
all
things
right.
like that.
So
So
there's
same with
stuff.
the Ultimate Edition. You get some bits for there. It's your choice if you want to spend the extra money.
Okay.
But
So
the battle pass, so we always had seasonal content in Diablo 3, and you would create a seasonal character in Diablo 3 that was only for that season, and you would get specific things that were created only for that season. And if you partook in that season, then you would get the items. They've moved to a battle pass system, and so for $10 for each season, you're gonna have exclusive items. So it says on their FAQ, throughout the pass, players can earn a variety of rewards for free just by playing in the same way that Fortnite works, right? At any point during the season, players can purchase a premium pass to unlock the ability to earn premium rewards tiers, including seasonally themed cosmetics and premium currency. Now, that premium currency allows you to skip tiers if you want to within the game, or I think you can use it to buy certain things within the game. And you can also buy that currency with real money if you want to. You can earn it in the game as well. There's been a bit of controversy around it because it's a $70 game. And then on top of it, you have this about $10 battle pass. And I thought I would have an issue with it, but I don't because I feel like there's so much content in the game for the $70 price. You get that full campaign, you get that massive, expansive map. And this is just for the people that really want to play Diablo 4 Endgame. And they've
yeah,
finished the game, they finished the story, but they're still hungry for more. And we're actually going to get something meaningful rather than just, some items with a different name that we got with the seasonal stuff before.
right.
You're
Yeah.
actually gonna get something that they can invest time and money into because people are paying for it.
Yeah, and I think realistically, right? Like I think that's just like I don't know. I think a lot of people want to make season passes and that kind of thing like a moralistic issue, right? Like they're either good or they're wholly good or they're wholly bad. And I just don't think it's that simple. I think if you have a game that is, an online like multiplayer only game that's free to play, then I think obviously there's nothing wrong with a season pass. But I think with a game like this that offers a single player mode that is robust enough to justify the price tag, and then there's an additional cost to make sure that the game continues to get support after launch for the diehards that do want to play season to season and that want to constantly have new things to chase. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really don't. And I think it's I think for the types of players that want to play this game that way, there will be value provided in that $10 or there won't be and you won't buy it, right? And I think it's as simple as that. If all it is cool cosmetics and stuff and and people don't vibe with that, then no harm, no foul, right?
It's
You
that
don't.
and the ability to skip levels. So if you create a new character, you can jump straight to say level 20 with that character,
Sure.
right? And
Okay.
and that adds value to people who are continually playing the game and want to jump from, say, a sorcerer to a necromancer to a barbarian to
Right.
a paladin, and they want to be able to play different classes, but still be able to keep up with friends and not have to start at the bottom and grind
I
their
feel like
way up.
paying for
Yeah.
that is slightly annoying. Like to be able to change character and be like, cool, I'm just going to play this character with my friends. Oh, I have to grind up first. The fact that you've played enough of the game that you can swap a character. Let's say you're already in the end game. The fact that you have to pay to be able to skip to that point in the game is probably is a little bit annoying. And I feel like that's something that maybe should be in the once you sort of reached a certain point in the game. Something maybe should be in the
So
game as
from what I
standard.
can tell, you can earn the premium currency in the game, and or you can buy it. So if you play enough of the game, I would imagine you'll acquire enough of the premium currency to be able to do that versus, just being able to just buying it. But you might want to spend that currency on other items within the game, that kind of thing, because there are multiple currencies like gold and there's something else. I can't remember what they call it. So that might be the case. I think we'll have to wait and see kind of how it all comes together when Diablo releases in June fully. But I saw some people comparing it to Splatoon and the way kind of they're doing their seasonal passes, and I don't see it as the same really because no one gave a shit about Splatoon stuff because it wasn't meaningful. It wasn't like
It was
you
free as
only
well, though, right?
yeah, it is free, and that's the comparison, right? Well, Nintendo's charging me $60 for this game, and they're giving me what is essentially a free battle pass and free content. Well, there is a level of free content that Blizzard's given you. It's just if you want some of those premium things, you kind of got to pay for it.
I
And I
also
think
That's not a
I don't.
great comparison because like Splatoon's content is not there, which is why I think that like if they were charging for a season pass, it's like I mean, well, they do, I guess, actually have that additional content that you can purchase, and we talked about why we didn't feel like that was particularly worthwhile. I think it's like it's all in the eye of the beholder, right? Like Max and I are both big Marvel Snap players, right? And like you can easily play that game without buying the season pass, right? And it's not at all going to impede the way that you play the game or your ability to get enjoyment out of it. But like it is going to limit, oh, you're not going to unlock these 2 new cards right away, right? Or you're not going to get these new variants. You're not going to get this premium currency that'll let you progress faster. You know, it's tough. I guess we'll have to see what the final version of the game looks like before we can really pass judgment on whether or not it's like fair or not. But I think when a game, even if it has a proper price tag, if there's a live service element to it, I mean, that's not the same thing, right? Like the $70 price tag pays for the actual game proper that they just developed the last several years. If you want them to keep supporting this game for, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of having there be a regular content drip, well, that money's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I think there's enough in there anyway. I can imagine we'll also get some paid DLC at some point with additional characters. At the moment, not all the characters were unlocked. I really wanted to go in and play as a necromancer because I don't think that was available in Diablo 3 at launch, and I was so excited to be able to just raise the dead. Wasn't available for this beta weekend, is available on the open beta weekend. So if you're playing this weekend,
Interesting.
you'll be able to play it. They kept a few of the characters locked this weekend. I think they just wanted to kind of limit the number of people and the number of potential bugs and issues that were occurring.
So who was playable? Because it says that in the final version there's going to be 5. It's barbarian, sorceress, druid, rogue, and necromancer.
So this weekend, I think we had Barbarian, Sorcerer, and the is it the Crusader or the Paladin? What do they call it
Paladin, I
this time?
think.
I think it was
Doesn't
those three.
Oh, interesting. That's not on
Or
this
maybe it's
list.
Druid.
Maybe
Which
maybe this is out of date. Yeah, it says
no,
it's
I'm probably mistaken. I went straight for the Sorcerer because I was and they changed the name of the
gotcha.
characters a lot. It used to be a Paladin, then it became a Crusader, and they may have removed it
Yeah,
entirely
there's
or
only
something.
barbarian, druid, necromancer, rogue, and sorcerer. It's sad to see the monk gone. The monk was a big favorite of mine in Diablo 3.
He might come back because he wasn't one of the launch people on Diablo either. He came in the DLC, so they may add him back in. Um, But I was very happy that I went for the magic because I love seeing that. Like the barbarian's cool, but he's all kind of just a meathead that's just like
Little basic. Yeah, it's a
whacking
tank.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I wanted to see how the new skill tree worked because they've kind of revamped that. and it very much is a tree. So like you have to do a certain number in this area to kind of go down to the next branch to get like some more in this area, but you can refund at any time and reassign those skill points. They do that same thing that they did in Diablo 3, where you can have, I think it's 6 skills, but at the beginning you can only have 1, and then as you kind of level up, it unlocks more and more slots, so you can kind of unlock more skills to put in those slots. So I've got some like really cool ice stuff, some stuff that like burns people. I've got some stuff that shocks people, and there's all sorts of things that I've got going on with the sorcerer, and it's good fun. I managed to get to level 19. I was a bit sad I didn't get to level 20, because if you get to level 20, you unlock something that you can only get if you play the beta, and it comes with you when you buy the main game. So hopefully I'll do that this weekend. But I know all my saves about to get wiped, so I'm gonna have to start again this weekend.
Oh no, it's a totally yeah, okay. That's
Yeah,
a shame.
but it's fine
Is
because I'm
that
gonna play as the necromancer this weekend. Is
I
what
was gonna
I
say,
wanna try it out.
do you have an idea of what class you wanna main eventually, or
So I always used to go for a Crusader. He's like a DPS with like auras that would like get people away from him, kind of thing. But then I enjoyed playing the Sorcerer in Diablo 3, or the Sorceress when they added her in. And I think I'm either going to go with the Necromancer or the Sorcerer this time around. I like the fact that every single character has different genders or body types, and you can really kind of choose from a set number. Because traditionally Diablo was, these are the options, pick from these ones. It's like you're either some big fat guy that's like a barbarian, or a skinny woman who's like a sorceress, and that was like, you had the options of those models, whereas now you
ah,
can
yes,
really
the
kind
2
of customize
genders.
it. Yeah. So I'm like I said, I'm having a really good time with that. I'm playing as the sorcerer. And I haven't really had any issues in terms of the beta experience. I know right at the beginning there was a really long queue times, but they seem to really fix that. And that kind of led way to me just like having a really good time with it. Um, there's some really obvious visual improvements and enhancements that they've done. But aside from that, I think the biggest difference is the cutscenes and how they kind of handle that. We still have those big cinematic cutscenes, and I skipped all of them because I want to watch them when I play the game proper. But you also have conversations that happen in engine, which didn't happen before. Like you have a conversation, it would just be that scroll and text on the screen. It now
Right.
kind of pans down, zooms in, and you're kind of talking with the person, like in a more
Oh,
intimate setting.
that's cool.
It's
Interesting.
really cool. And there's these areas as well when you get to like big like dungeons or areas, like I got to a monastery, and you press the button and it will zoom down and like pan out, and you'll see like the full 3D view of it, and like the like first person perspective of your character. It's
Interesting.
really
Well,
cool.
you
They've
can
done
look
some really
around it
cool
as
stuff with
well,
it.
or
No, it's just a button that says look, and then it will
okay.
just like kind of pan down. It's like so you can take a picture of like, oh, look where I've got to, kind
That's
of
really
thing.
cool though.
But yeah, it looks really cool. It's not just like that fixed isometric now. They're really kind of experimenting with 3D space and cameras now that it's turned into like a full 3D game.
I really like that. Yeah, that's cool. I saw it like in the yeah, I've been showing the kids footage over on YouTube, and in the intro there's like an intro cinematic, and like it kind of zoomed into the character as you like took control, and I figured that was just
Oh,
for the
it's
intro. So
absolutely
that's
seamless.
cool.
It's so seamless, the cutscenes. Like, I walked through this door, and then next thing I know, like, the video didn't even load like it used to. It was my character walking, like, into that room in full 3D cinematic. It was so fucking cool. I was like, "Oh my god, this is, like, a next level over what we've had previously." And all of the levels, all of the transitions are seamless. Used to be, you go down another floor in a dungeon, or you would go from one area to another, and we'd have a big long loading screen while it kind of
Mhm.
all all loads in. Now it's like I click the button, I get flashed with a little black screen, and it's just like a seamless transition. I'm in the next area again. There's no kind of penalty for wanting to explore and go into all of the different areas now, because now we've got not only full on dungeons, and you can go and explore them and raid them with your clan if you want to, and you'll get rewards for doing that. We also have these tiny little cellars, they call them, which are just like little areas. We have always had them, like the Den of Evil, and you go in there and you have to defeat all of the enemies, and like you will get something at the end of it for it. And there's real meaningful side quests as well that like as you go into a new town, there'll be loads of little blue exclamation marks around, and you can just opt to do them or not if you just want to go through the main story. And it's really nice to have more options and more gameplay and more things to do in the game.
All right, Steve, you win. I'll get this. Is the open
Let's
beta like
go.
free open? Like I can just download it and start playing it.
Completely open
All
from
right.
Saturday until 8 p.m. Monday UK time. So I highly recommend downloading it ahead of time if you want to play.
All right.
Um,
Fine.
and then we'll all team up if you want, and we can all go play some
Make
Diablo
some
together.
time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds great.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean,
Sounds
this
good
is
to
what
me.
I'm really looking forward to getting get my mitts on this one at some point, and I think it's definitely one that we're going to be playing later this year and talking a lot about. And yeah, especially excited for you, Steve. I know obviously it's a franchise that's really near and dear to your heart, so I'm glad to see it seems like this one's gonna
Oh yeah,
deliver.
this one I think may top Diablo 2 for me the more I play it, I think. We'll have to see because that one
Pretty
is my
good.
favorite.
Wow.
And I'm just really wondering how the hell I'm going to play all the games that are coming out because we've got Zelda, then this, then Baldur's Gate and Starfield, and it's just like
Star Wars.
what's gonna oh, I can care less about that. But it's like what's gonna take my attention, And I think Diablo that I did not stop thinking about it all weekend. It's just I want to pick it up. I want to pick it up now, but I know by the time we finish recording, it'll be over and I won't be able to play. So I've got to wait till this weekend. And then what's gonna be hell is that after this weekend, I've got to wait 3 months until I can play it in June. And it's gonna kill me because I just want to play this game right now.
Well,
So I want
so
to close
do
out. Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm really looking forward to it. I want to close out the Diablo talk with a question here from Left Eye Lazy from the Discord, who wrote in and said, "As someone who's never played Diablo before, is 4 a perfect starting point, or should I cut my teeth on 3 before release?" I mean, it sounds like 4 is a good place to start.
Yeah, it is because it's kind of an independent story. Diablo 3 killed off a bunch of what I would say are legacy characters in that game. I won't spoil who, but a bunch of the old favorites, they got killed off. So you kind of got a fresh starting point to move on if you want to. But I would say if you want to play a short Diablo before Diablo 4, Diablo 2 Resurrected is a phenomenal game. And it's that traditional classic Diablo. You'll really got to get to grips with what Diablo was before you pick up Diablo 4, which is a lot more in depth and there's a lot more mechanics and a lot more to learn. You can really then just come into it knowing the basics of Diablo, knowing what kind of character you want to play, and just go straight that way. I think my current ranking for Diablo games would be Diablo 2 Resurrected, then Diablo 4, based on what I've played, the
Damn.
original Diablo, and then Diablo 3 is my least favorite. I think if you're gonna play one, please don't play Diablo 3. It will give you a really bad impression of what a Diablo game is. As someone who loves
It's
Diablo, I mean, I know Asobi was in the Discord in the channel talking about it, and he said, it depends on the kind of player you are, because if you're someone who wants to invest thousands of hours into a game grinding to play a game, then Diablo is for you. I don't know what kind of player you are. Diablo 3, I don't think is any less grindy, but it's certainly less satisfying for my
it's
money.
all the grind and none of the fun.
Yeah, I kind of felt that.
Fun's why we play.
Exactly. Anyway, we're like I said, we're gonna be talking a lot more about Diablo 4 later this year. I imagine it will be on the short list for Steve's Game of the Year. So we'll put a pin in that for now. All right, and we'll come back to that in the weeks and months to come. But before we get into the rest of the show, let me remind you that this week's episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of March. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobi, Snackago, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Speaking of, you want to find links to those sister shows, if you want to become a Patreon producer yourself, get a bunch of cool perks and goodies. If you want to come and join our Discord right into the show, keep the conversation rolling between episodes, whatever you want to do, however you want to get involved, flipscreen.games is our website where you can find links to all the places we are all over the web. However you choose to show your support or get involved, we thank you for tuning in to this week's show. All right, so our next story here is an interesting one. The top rated games of 2023 so far are all remakes.
I actually want to correct this and say not just remakes, they're all old games because somewhere between Resident Evil 4, sorry, I've just spoiled the thing, but somewhere in this list actually is Persona 4 as well.
Yeah, we've also got The Witcher 3 re-release
Yep.
and Tetris Effect coming to PS5 is also
Yeah.
there. But in terms of newly released games and newly created games, we've got Metroid Prime Remastered at 95 on Metacritic, Resident Evil 4 Remake at 93, and then we've got the Dead Space remake at 89. And so, below that, like it's until you get to number 10 on the list until we get a brand new game with Hi-Fi
Hi-Fi
Rush.
Rush.
It's kind of crazy
Mm.
to
Isn't
think.
what about 8 with Pistol Whip? Has that been
Pistol Whip is an old game that's coming to PSVR 2 for the first time. So that was on
Gotcha.
PSVR
Okay.
1.
That was on PSVR 1 and PC
Yep.
already. Yeah. So yeah, it's literally not
Yeah.
until the 10th game on the list that you get a new game in Hi-Fi Rush. Wild.
It's impressive, right? It's I mean, it's just I guess the thing about this is that you're taking games that were already beloved and already critically acclaimed, giving them a fresh lick of paint and releasing them in sort of a good state again, with all of the
Yeah.
without trying to sort of modernize them too much or change too much, just sort of keeping the core experience. And it's working out very well. And I wonder if the success that specifically these three games have had are going to have people diving. I know we get remakes all the time, but people are going to dive back into these games that are like, oh, you can't touch these games; they're already just as good. Things like Resident Evil 4 that people are still buying in like this original format on Switch, PC, PS5. It's always on sale. It's always been re-released, and now they've even remastered it, and it's going to be a huge success.
I
Uh,
think I think we're gonna see a lot more of these for that reason. And this is like it's part of a broader conversation we've been having on this show, right? Where I think it was in the last couple weeks where I remember we had a conversation about what does the future look like for games as a service, right? And that like as we're moving into a recession and people have less money to throw around and you see all these, high profile you know, games like that with big budgets behind them in some cases dying and going away quickly and not living up to their expectations. And whether that's AAA examples like Avengers, right, was like a really public blunder, or Gotham Knights, or some of the littler stuff like Knockout City or like Rumbleverse, which Rumbleverse wasn't even around for a full year before it got the axe. um, I think that you're gonna see a move back towards more single player stuff, like looking at Elden Ring and what a success that was last year. I think there are going to be publishers that want to go back to that's quote unquote safer model. And
mhm.
I think re-releases or remasters or remakes, however you want to slice them, are looked at as an even more safe, predictable bet, right? Because of what you just outlined, right? If these are Metroid Prime Remastered, right? Many, I think, would argue one of the best games of all time, one of the best games in its genre.
I would argue that, yes.
Well, I mean, just look at how many times Skyrim was re-released, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
they were able to clean up every single time it got re-released because everyone loves that game, and it's just like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
here's an excuse for me to play it again.
Yeah.
It looks slightly nicer. I'll go pick it up then. Whereas something like Resident Evil 4, though, that's and Dead Space, they are full blown remakes. There's like no original
right.
code in there, none of the original assets. They started from scratch. And I feel like there is definitely a difference between a remake and a remaster. You look at
For
something like The
sure.
Last of Us Part 1, but
But I
even
think the
still, these
bankability of it is
games
the same, is
yeah,
the
and
thing.
these games, regardless of whether it's a remake or a remaster, they're cheaper to make than coming up with a fresh new concept, starting from ground zero with, "Oh, we've got no idea what this is. We don't even have a title. There's no marketing. What
Right.
is this game gonna be?"
Yeah.
And we can start with a fully blown story with characters that everyone knows, and we can build upon it, and we can just make it look good
And
and make it feel good, make it
I
play
think
like a
that
modern way.
that applies across the board too, right? Because it's cheaper in terms of like you don't need to like go through the ideation of a new IP or a new entry or any of that stuff. But there's also the whole like a lot of game developers talk about how one of the big challenges when you're developing a game is finding the fun and like finding the game as you develop it. We already know where the fun is in Dead Space. We know what the fun is in Witcher 3, right? Like we know what these games are. Or maybe that's a bad example. We'll say with Resident Evil 4, right? And that being like a
Are you
proper
saying because The
remake.
Witcher 3 is not fun? Is that why you're saying that, Pete?
He's right.
Yes, but
He
no.
is saying that.
But you know what I mean, right? Like it's even if you're starting with a clean slate, you have so much to build on. And then you also have the name recognition, right? Like with something like Dead Space, or Metroid Prime Remastered. These are games that have been that are harrowed, right? That we think of as being masterpieces, all-time greats, but they've been gone for a really long time. They haven't been playable on modern hardware in some cases. And even when they have, it's a very old, unoptimized version that's not living up to the standard that we're now kind of used to. And this is something that I think is kind of playing out in a bunch of different ways across the industry. One of the things that almost made it to the news docket this week was that Far Cry 5 got a new patch that was like 60 FPS,
Yeah, kind of
bringing
pointless patch, because if you're on Xbox, it was already there. It's just brought it, I guess, the PlayStation people
PC
up
and
to spec.
PlayStation though.
Yeah.
Um,
Just the
and
Game of the
maybe
Year edition thing that came out.
No, this is 5 years since Far Cry 5, so they're doing something
Oh,
for
right.
that.
they
Okay.
put
I'm thinking
just a
Far Cry
free update.
6.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a big motivation for companies to do those kinds of things now because I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors that point to it. I think part of it is probably just that there is like the ability to leverage new hardware to make old games feel new again. But there's also, the stuff that we've been talking about off and on since 2020, right? Where it's getting harder and harder to get new games out the door, right? Let alone the fact that we're going into a recession, people have less money to throw around, taking big risks is not always advisable, right? Especially when people's belts are leaner. But then there's also the reality of there's a workforce problem in games right now. We've talked a lot about how you have studios. We just talked a few weeks ago about IO Interactive announcing their next big game, which is probably 5-6 years away. We're nowhere near seeing it, but they need to hire people and they're struggling to find
Well,
talent.
yeah, and Blizzard did the same thing, right? What's the next after Diablo 4? It's going to be a new IP, and they spoke about that. And people want to go and work on something fresh at these legendary studios,
Right.
regardless of the bad press that they've had. They still hold a lot of luster around them.
Absolutely. And I think when you think about these games, right? Like you go back to The Last of Us Part 1, right? We talked all about that where there was so much controversy around it. We don't need a remake. We don't want this, blah 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 blah. It sold really well. It was timed extremely well to the integration with the HBO show, which obviously was a big success. But again, the bedrock thing was that they have a whole huge crew of talented animators and artists and programmers and all these people that are not sitting in the room with, Neil Druckmann and the creative leadership who are there deciding what the next project is or working on the next narrative or directing the game. They're the folks in the trenches that are waiting for the next assignment. And go read Jason Schreier's books, right? Like historically, between those projects, people get laid off. And then right
Mhm.
now we're having a hiring problem. Do you really want to lay off a huge chunk of your staff that already knows your IP, knows your tools, is already in the culture, and then do you want to waste a bunch of money rehiring those exact same types of people in 2 or 3 years when you need to go into all hands on deck mode for the next proper Naughty Dog game? Like no. And I think more and more you're going to see publishers working in more remakes and remasters and these things into their portfolio and into their schedule because it gives something for people to do between your next big original project, which, like we said, takes longer than it used to. It was a couple weeks ago. I remember Jason tweeted about how if a game were to start pre-production now, a new AAA game, it wouldn't come out until the PS6 because of how long game development takes
Yeah.
versus how long it used to take. And we talked about Naughty Dog putting out less games this generation than they had previously because of that. And I think all of these things are all part of the same broader issue, right? Is that it's getting harder and takes longer and more expensive to put out big new games. It's more of a risk because of the current financial situation. And again, looking at something like Forspoken, which was like a big new IP that they spent all this money developing and producing and marketing and it was a flop, right? Whereas Dead Space came out gangbusters. Now they can easily remake Dead Cells 2. They can remake Dead Cells 3. And if we're not, or I'm sorry, not Dead Cells, Dead Space. And if we're not sick of it by then, maybe they make a new one. Right. And that's you're getting more releases, more fresh stuff. more stuff that feels new without having to go through the same amount of effort and investment that it takes to actually do something new.
Yeah, I think the other thing that Sony's kind of got is porting their games to other platforms. We're about to see Naughty Dog's first in-house PC game. Iron Galaxy did the Uncharted collection. And I wonder if that turns out to be a success, if that also becomes a strategy, right? They finish a game, they release it on PlayStation, that team that was working on that game then carries on working on it, ports it to PC, while another team's already amped up on production, and then when they're ready, they kind of go and join them. So they've got two potential strategies there. It's like, do I bring it to another platform? Because we've also spoke last week about Final Fantasy, right? And how they said that even within 6 months, we're not gonna be able to bring it to PC, that they got that exclusivity agreement with PlayStation, but it's not gonna be ready. So there's still work to be done bringing it to other platforms. But I think it's really interesting that the top-rated games are remasters, and whether that is because the original game was so beloved and people are excited to replay it, or whether these are just in their own right really good games as
It's a little
remakes.
of both.
Yeah, I think it seems like a combination of both because a lot of what people are talking about when they talk about Metroid Prime is remaster specifically is not just that the remaster is good and the visuals good, but also that not only that the original game was so good and that it still holds up, but also like the way that they've remade it and the things that they've changed and the way that it runs on Switch is very, very good. And I think it's the same with Resident Evil 4 remake, as people said, like the core of the game and what's good about the game is still here. It's now just got a fresh lick of paint. I know Steve's going to disagree with all of this, but it's got a fresh lick of paint, and it sort of like modernizes a lot of things like the QTEs and stuff that were maybe are now a bit more outdated.
Look, I can see that this game is obviously a masterpiece. It just doesn't gel with me in the same way that everyone loves Pokemon, but that game's not for me. In the same way that, Elden Ring was mine and your favorite game last year,
Hell
Max, but
yeah.
he hated the fucking thing. So it's like not every game is for everyone, but it can still objectively be a really, really good game. I think this year is going to be interesting at the Game Awards in terms of what counts as a new game. Does Metroid Prime Remastered get a look in because it's seen as a
No.
remaster versus Dead
Nah.
Space, which is a remake?
Yeah, I
I
think
don't think
Metro
so.
Prime
I don't think
won't. I think
remasters get that same consideration. Like, I
no.
think unless it's a from the ground up
But if
style.
they had called that remake, because from what Max was saying, there's a lot in there that's fresh, that's new, that
Yeah.
is remade from scratch. It's interesting that it's just that moniker, the remaster versus the
Mhm.
remake that
I don't
really
know. I mean,
changes things.
it could definitely still happen. It's just like
If that turns
I
out to be the highest ranking game of 2023, which I don't think it will, because we've got Zelda and we've got Starfield and we've got Diablo and Baldur's Gate and all of these
95
other
is
big
really
games,
hard to
right?
beat though. 95 is a very high score. Like,
It's like
like
so
the
Hell
is the
yeah.
highest ranking game of 2023 really not gonna be considered as a game of the year?
Yeah, it's what we'll call into question, I think, a lot of like what we consider a game of the year worthy, maybe. But hey, maybe
I
that's a conversation towards the end of the year. We'll have an argument about that then. You never know.
yeah, and I think we will, but I think I don't know. We've had a whole episode about this, and we're gonna talk about it more in a second here. But I think it's obvious the difference, right? Like, I think you don't want what is essentially just a re-release of an already great game to be considered the game of the year for a particular year, right? Even if it is one of the best games we played that year, even if it is on a personal top 10 or something like that, when you're talking about like what game of the year means, it's like it's supposed to be about, I think, the games that defined that year. And I think something like RE2 Remake, where you take a PlayStation 1 game and completely reimagine it as a totally new type of game, that is a new game, regardless of the fact that it's based on something else, right?
I agree.
Final
And
Fantasy
like The Last
VII
of Us
Remake
Part 1, I
is
don't think got considered last year, right?
no, and it shouldn't have been
Did it
because it's
not?
the same
Okay.
game. It's the best version of that game now,
But
and
Dead
like
Space is the
that's
same
fine.
game, and it's the best version of the game, a lot of people would say. Is that gonna get considered? Because that is from scratch, we started from nothing. And,
Right.
another one that I think was considered, Demon Souls, also the same game, just looks
That's
Was
nicer,
Demon
different
right?
though.
Souls
That's
ever
different though
considered?
because I don't remember if Demon Souls was
I
considered.
don't
You'd have
remember
to
it
fact
ever
check back
being.
on that. I still think
Give me
those
a
are
minute.
different enough. Where if you look at Demon Souls on PS3 versus on PS5, like there are a lot
They
of
look very
changes.
different, but it's not what you were saying a remake maybe is, which is a reimagining, a whole
Right.
new game.
No, I'm just
It is
saying
structurally still identical. It just
it's a
looks a
spectrum
lot
though.
better. Yeah.
Right? Because it's like I think like structurally that matters, but like how much does it matter? Like I think like the Link's Awakening remake feels like a new game rather than just a port, right? It's
Yes,
not
100%.
the
Yeah.
same thing. And I think
Even though it is identical in terms of what you go and do, and you were able to tell me,
structurally,
having
sure.
known, because like you knew how you were helping me on stream, you knew the original game,
Yeah.
and you're just like, oh yeah, you got to take this annoying ball and do this, that, and the other. It's just like,
Right. And sure, like that's true. But I think that like to me, it's like you compare that to like film, for example, right? Like you wouldn't consider a 4K Blu-ray remastered edition of Star Wars: A New Hope, which came out in like 1978 or whatever it is. You wouldn't consider that a new movie, right?
But if they
Whereas
took if they took the script and they took it had new actors, it was refilmed
reshot
with
it,
a remake.
they've done that a
that's a
lot of
new
times.
movie.
But that was that film with Lady Gaga in that's been filmed like 5 times,
Oh,
and
the one with I'm not gonna spoil it actually. The one with Bradley Cooper in it
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
it's been made like 5 times.
Oh god, what is that called? That's gonna really get on
I
my
can't think of it.
nerves.
Is it A Star Is
Star is
Born?
Born. A Star
Yeah,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
Star
Born.
is Born
Yeah.
has been made like
Right.
5 times.
Like that's the thing though, right? Is like I don't think it's just the structure. Like it goes deeper than that, right? Where it's like you look at like the Crash Bandicoot remakes or the Spyro the Dragon remakes, like those are structurally the same game, but the mechanics have changed, the art style has changed, like the vibe is different. I think that's more of a remake than not, right? Whereas like Metroid Prime Remaster is, I think, more akin to a remaster, even though there is new stuff. It's not super fundamentally different as much as it is just like a better optimized, fresh version of it that feels like a modern game in its own way, you know? And I think there's a line there. It is a spectrum, but I think like comparing something like Dead Space to RE2, it's apparent what the difference is, right? Like Dead Space is more akin, I think, to like the Crash Bandicoot Spyro thing, where it's like we're trying to like capture what you remember this game feeling like, versus RE2 remake is not really like that at all. Like it is more
No,
like
but
how do we
Resident Evil 4 remake
is more
because
like that,
it
right?
is more like that, and that is one of the highest rated games of 2023, and I think that one will get considered for Game of the Year.
Probably, and I wonder if that's the precedent set by the two games that came prior to it having an influence there. Like, would we feel the same way about it if RE2 and RE3 remake had never come out and this was just coming out now? Would you still think of it as a new game, or would you think of it as more of a, I don't know. I think it's an interesting question though. And I think it's why we keep coming back to it. So, speaking of which, I do want to jump into a question here. This one comes from Andy Rads, who wrote in and said, "Do we expect a remaster to be cheaper than a remake?"
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
think so because we kind of see them as a re-release. So I kind of see it as, oh, this
Yeah.
is a souped up port from a previous console,
Yeah. I mean,
and
we often see collections of remakes, remasters for the same price as a new game, or
we
sometimes even
do,
cheaper.
unless you're
Sure.
Nintendo, and then you
Yeah.
do one collection like the Mario one, and then you decide if it's got Zelda on the box, we can charge whatever we want,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
we'll do Skyward Sword and not the games you actually want.
See, that's why like my answer to this question is no. I expect every game to cost full price. And when it doesn't cost full price, I'm pleasantly surprised. But like, I don't think it makes sense that Metroid Prime Remaster is cheaper than Skyward Sword.
Which is
Um,
interesting because a lot of people gawked at the price of Diablo. They were like, "Fuck, $70," and I'm just like, "It's kind of what games cost these days
that's
now."
what
Like,
video games
that's the
cost now,
precedent
right?
that's been set, and I feel like PC games are gonna become that price more and more. It'd be interesting to
Hmm.
see when Sony finally goes, "Nope, it's 70 over there as well."
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is like, I think when it comes to prices, and we've talked about this a lot, the price of anything is what someone will pay for it.
Yeah, and which there's one game in particular though which really annoys me, and that is The Last of Us Part 1, because The Last of Us Part 1, which took them significantly less time to make because they already had the engine from The Last of Us Part 2, they already had the game, and they were able to reuse a lot of the assets, and obviously all the voices, the motion capture, everything was already there, is 70. But The Last of Us Part 2 is a PS4 game, so it's cheaper at $60. And it's insane to me that they
Yeah.
haven't put out an actual PS5 version of that game and charged 70. I could understand if they're like the same price, but to charge more for one than the other is kind of weird.
I was very lucky to get Last of Us Part 1 for £35 for PC. So
Nice. That's a good
yeah,
deal.
that is
That's
a
a
good
good
deal.
deal. Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing though, right? Is like it's not really based on that. And I think it's like that's why it's so funny with like the Nintendo statement where they're like, "Oh, we had that quote from Doug Bowser last week that was making the rounds where he's like, "Well, we think that Tears of the Kingdom warrants the price point." Right? And it's like I mean, that's the thing. No one's come to an agreement on what the tiers are, right? Like it's like back in the day, like I mean, if you think about it, like prior to the Xbox Live Arcade, right? Games cost what they cost. Every boxed game cost the same amount of money. It wasn't until we had digital marketplaces where we started experimenting with that cost equation. And to see that now where like shit, in that interview, Doug even said that's more common in regions like you guys, right? Where you live, that's normal. There are lots of games that are like, oh, this is a $60 Switch game, this is a $50 Switch game, this is that. I mean, like
There's no
in
dollars Switch games in our country at all, actually, Pete. I'll tell you, it's pounds. So oh yeah,
okay,
roll those eyes,
yeah.
mate. Roll those eyes. Just a little bit of
Whatever you
correction.
guys call it. Yeah, I'm just, I'm talking about, America, where the center of the universe, right? Like this is where everything happens, right? That's what they tell me anyway. That's what I've heard. But yeah, I think that's already my expectation is that like when a game is announced, it costs $70 or it costs $60 if it's on Switch. And any variance beyond that is based on what they think they can get away with, not what it's actually worth. Because I have a really hard time imagining that it took more work to make the Skyward Sword port than it did to make the Metroid Prime port.
Yeah.
But
Or to make
Metroid
Breath of the
doesn't.
Wild. It's the same price as Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. But that's Nintendo,
Great,
really.
yeah, great point.
But I think Nintendo are also slightly different in many ways.
Yeah, I think they are in some ways, but also in other ways, it's the comparison with The Last of Us and Sony, right? We put the same game out again, and we're
This is
charging
what it
what we can.
costs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing if there's any other remakes that we don't know about coming out, and whether they'll still top the charts towards the end of the year.
I would put money on there's going to be some surprise drops later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah. I like I said, I think this is something that you should expect to be par for the course from now on. That it'll be a very, very common occurrence year to year to see several of these start finding their ways into those gaps in the release schedule. I think that's just the way of the world now.
Yeah.
But you know what? If they're all going to be this good, I'm okay with it.
Me too.
All right. So if you guys want to write in and let us know your thoughts on Diablo 4's beta, or maybe you're going to get into it this weekend and you got some questions for next week's show, make sure you write in and let us know. Or if you want to let us know what games you want to see get remade in 2023 and beyond. There's a bunch of ways that you can write in and get involved in the show. Remember, questions@flipscreen.games. That is our email address. You can come join the Discord where the conversation keeps rolling between episodes. However you choose to get involved, we'd love to hear from you for next week's show. And maybe you can get your question read on the question block, just like Andy Rads did this week. We got a bunch of them. We got some more sitting on. So first week, we got a slow news week. We're going all in on that question block. So make sure you keep writing in with your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you want to get in touch with us any of the other ways that you can, you want to check out one of our sister shows, you want to become a Patreon supporter, however you want to get involved and show your support, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to everywhere we are all over the web. For the crew, that wraps it up for this week's episode of the show. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been, I'm backwards. I'm mirrored now. We have a new setup. Okay. He's been Steve. He's been Max. We've been FlipScreen Games Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
We did it, guys. Nailed it.